All right, welcome back, or welcome everyone to the afternoon session of Mirrors or Movers. For those of you who joined us for lunch, I hope you are freshly energized and renourished and ready to go into what's hopefully going to be a very interesting afternoon. So this is the 11th edition of Mirrors or Movers, which is the Responsible Media Forum's annual conference fully dedicated to the impact of media content on society. My name is Daniel Witte, and I have the pleasure of leading the RMF and chairing the first panel this afternoon. If you'd like to join the conversation on what is now known as X, previously known as Twitter, you'd be very welcome to using the hashtag Mirrors or Movers, and you can tag us as well. We are RMF. So this year's theme is a positive brain print, a commercial no-brainer, if you excuse the pun. And we're asking whether content that has a positive impact on society, that moves society in a positive way, also now makes good business sense. We picked this theme because we're seeing growing evidence that that type of content does make business sense. For example, films with diverse talent on or off screen, series with a climate storyline or environmental storyline, are driving audience engagement and helping media companies reach new audiences as well. We've got an exciting agenda lined up, as you can see, covering different types of content, different topics, inclusion and belonging to pre-loved fashion, formats from gaming to TV, news media to podcasts, and speakers from academia, media, NGOs, and more. We also have some people joining us online. Welcome to you as well. If you'd like to join to ask a question, then please do so using the Q&A function on Zoom. If you're in the room and you'd like to ask a question, please do. And please also say who you are and which company you work for when you introduce yourself. We will start with a panel exploring alternative content formats, which we've not covered before at Mirrors and Movers, including gaming, podcasts, and audio-based content. And we'll explore how these can be used to deliver positive impact on society and reach new audiences. And if I can now invite my panelists to join me on stage. So I'm joined by Jennifer Estaris, who is game director at ustwogames. And ustwogames is a B Corp studio known for the architectural illusion adventure game Monument Valley and the conservation-focused Alba, a wildlife adventure. Jennifer directed Monument Valley's To the Lost Forest, which petitions for forest protection and has 20 years of experience in the gaming industry, including at Cybo, Nickelodeon, and Disney. I'm also joined by Oliver Latham, who is VP of Strategy and Growth for Pearson and is responsible for Pearson's workforce skills strategy, which focuses on data-driven upskilling and reskilling that supports career progression, drives growth for employers, and helps people unlock their potential. And then last but not least, I'm joined by Hanna Grahn, who's Climate Action Manager at Spotify. And Hanna leads Spotify's climate action, both in its own operations and through its audio platform, and coordinates Spotify's effort to build awareness and drive action amongst listeners and creators. So we'll start with just an introductory question to tell us a little bit more about the content that you create. I think, is the mic working? Yeah. Oh, well, let's see. I think it's picking it up. Okay. Tell us a bit more about what you do at your organization and how you're bringing sustainability into your content. And I think we're starting with Oliver.
Thanks, Daniel. And thanks for having us here. And welcome to Pearson. So this is our office, which hopefully you're enjoying. And we're enjoying welcoming you. So my role is VP for Strategy and Growth within our Workforce Skills division. Pearson's an organisation that spans all lives and stages. And so this goes from K through 12, so everything from nursery right through till the end of school. And then we support universities. We also support into work, which is where I focus heavily, but also language learning. And so across that remit, we've got quite a lot of responsibility. We cover 160 million different learners across the world. And so in this particular context, we do think about different ways of providing content to people in all stages, and we'll cover that. We also cover specific ESG content, and we have a large ESG agenda ourselves with 20,000 people globally. So we'll try and cover multiple parts of that. In terms of our overall strategy, we really think about putting what we say life into a lifetime of learning. So the role we have and the role we play for any learner is incredibly important. And the fact that we want that to last through life, we think can have a massive impact on on the world. And so I've got a little video here to put some of that into context for how we put a life into a lifetime of learning. Cue video.
Take one, action.
We are all on unique learning journeys. Journeys that will never really end.
Because the minute we stop learning, we stop fully living.
At Pearson, our purpose is to add life to a lifetime of learning.
And we all add life differently.
Add opportunity to a lifetime of learning.
Joy.
Connection.
Curiosity.
Vibrancy.
Adventure. Definitely adventure.
Add meaning.
Add equity to a lifetime of learning.
Growth to me means acquiring new skills and knowledge that will help me make better decisions to improve the quality of my life.
Progress means constantly improving.
You gotta add flexibility.
It's all very personal.
The future we're working hard to create
Is one that brings education to everyone in their own way.
During moments that really matter.
Support.
Confidence.
Fun. We've got to add some fun.
It's all just life, right?
We all add different aspects of life to a lifetime of learning.
What will you add?
So looking forward to putting ESG into a lifetime of learning. Thanks.
Thank you, Oliver. And I'll come to you next, Hanna.
Yes, I of course don't have a video, given that we are all about audio, but I hope you know what Spotify is. Otherwise, find me afterwards. But so we work at Spotify at two parts, basically. One is in terms of getting to net zero, which was more tricky than we expected being a digital company, because there is really no clear pathway. So that has been very exciting to kind of try to take down emissions from streaming and such services. But I want to focus on the other part a bit more than today, given the topic. And that's really how we use our platform to engage and inspire around this. And I started off with talking a lot about education. So that was what we thought first. If we just provide facts and information and the science, people will do the right thing and start to change. What we quickly realized is that we do have a lot of education and science already. So what we tried to make is add this information into existing formats, so to try to bring it where people are rather than move them somewhere else. So that is something we have worked with a lot with in the past years. It's back. We worked with that a lot in the past years to try out different formats. So it's everything from audio dramas. So there we have a podcast called 2072, which I can recommend to listen to. Where we also used a little bit unexpected actors that were famous for other genres, such as more teen drama and so on, to try to add to that and to bring people in. We've also done true crime, for example, given that that is the #1 podcast category globally. Everyone listens to true crime. So we did Earth-related true crime, everything from a killer that was walking around in natural parks only to other kinds of crimes against nature. So that is something we've done as well. So we try and test different formats, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on.
Great. Thanks, Hanna. And last but not least, Jennifer.
Hi. You gave such a great intro to me earlier and to all of us, so I feel like I was like, I don't have much to say now, but I think I'll talk about the games we worked on. No, it's great. Although I will add that I am a climate justice activist. I'm active in Extinction Rebellion Families, in the IGDA Climate SIG, which stands for the International Game Developers Association Climate Special Interest Group. It's really long, but it's a grassroots organization about taking all the game developers and trying to work together on different climate initiatives. It's super fun, not just in the studio and not just in our games, but also with our players and with the greater world. And then I'm a member on the advisory council for Playing for the Planet, which is this UNEP backed alliance of over 40 game studios, including Microsoft, Rovio, who made Angry Birds, Ubisoft, Supercell, Cybo, makers of Subway Surfers, which is a game with 3 billion downloads, and then ustwogames, this little group, this little company of 30 people joining in with the big league people. I hope to talk about that more later. And I'm a big I'm a big person on Hope Punk. I believe we can build better futures together, and I look forward to doing that with all of you. I want to talk a bit about ustwogames. So it's a B Corp. our tagline, I had to write it here because I keep forgetting it. It's fresh off the press. It is playful experiences that inspire positive change. And the fact that this is coming from our chief creative officer as something that we, like every all hands meeting, he brings this and says, this is our tagline. And I keep forgetting it. But every time he brings it, it just makes it part of the studio culture, and I love that. I don't think it's as catchy as the life experience one, but I was like, oh, okay, for us, we'll be like, play, a lifetime of playing, or something like that. We'll just steal yours. So ustwogames, we make award-winning games. We're known for Monument Valley 1 and 2, for Alba Wildlife Adventure, for, I'm going to miss a few, Dusta, The Memories Between just came out. It is on Netflix Games. Please play it, or ask Eileen how to play it over there. Just going to call her out. She's over from Netflix. And just checking if there's another game. Assemble with Care, which is a game about fighting obsolescence of objects. So this is a part of our just natural cultures to make games about sustainability. So Monument Valley launched in 2014. It was a surprise hit. It's, you know, he said, atmospheric, architectural, optical illusion, think MC Escher in the palm of your hand, interactive, and the series has over 100 million downloads. For Alba Wildlife Adventure, I'll play the video, or you will play the video while I speak about it. So this is a game about, well, initially it's about bird photography, but then, as you see, it's an open world explorer, and it becomes about protecting your island, and in fact, protecting your local nature reserve against the evil capitalist hotelier who's trying to take over. And I like to think of it as a Greta Thunberg trainer. In partnership with Ecology, we plant a tree, and for every download, so we have planted over 1 million trees. Please play it. It's available on every platform. And I don't know if there's anything else I wanted to say about that, other than it's super cute. I love the dolphin.
My daughter would love this.
Yeah, it's like a holiday with good, for good. It's also out, I think, on Switch, too, so that's a bit old. I'll fix that. I think on PlayStation, too, and Xbox. And then the next one is the trailer for Monument Valley 2, Chapter of the Lost Forest that my team and I had worked on in collaboration with Playing for the Planet. And this is called The Lost Forest, and the idea here is trying to help players reconnect with the beauty of trees by putting them deep into a lost forest. We begin and end this chapter with a call to action. It's a petition with Play for Forests calling upon world leaders to protect what is one of our best line of defenses against climate change. And yeah, and we also have a survey in there too, which I'll talk about later. It's in cooperation with Playing for the Planet. And I think that's it about me and the studio that I'm here to share. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. First question from me then to the panel. Maybe we can start with you, Jennifer, and work our way backwards. We think about gaming, we think about learning, we think about Spotify and streaming. I mean, immediately I think the mind goes to particularly younger audiences. And I think I can speak on behalf of the room that often, in some cases of more traditional media companies, those audiences can be harder to reach. But we also know, for example, that young audiences are, much more worried about things like climate change than maybe people in their, middle ages are. Can you talk us a bit through how your content formats are particularly helping, bring that sustainability message to younger audiences and engage with that group?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. It's games. So for the younger audiences, they have that perfect trifecta of 1, playfulness, which lends itself well to gaming, 2, copious amounts of time, like if I had the amount of time kids have nowadays, and then 3, that especially with the Generation Z, that idea of being socially responsible, as you had talked about. So it just naturally makes sense for games. And I think a big one for us will be how do we remain as entertainment, how do we remain fun, but also serve the broccoli with the rest of the meal? How do we get that in without feeling sneaky about it?
Thank you. Maybe Hanna, I can come to you next.
And I think for us it has been a lot of focus on giving them a voice. When we talk to many, they feel that they're not heard or not seen in the right settings where decisions are made and where they feel that it really can have make a difference. So we have done that everything from the climate conferences, the COPs, where we've had on-site podcast studios focusing also on bringing up young voices there and the youth activists so that they can get a stronger voice. We've done that. We also did for Earth Day 1 year. We did also lift up, once again, young voices, especially from other parts of the world that are not heard as much. So we have, for example, a podcast in Greenlandic, if you want to listen to that. But once again, just lifting more perspectives. And so that is what we've tried to do. We also have a podcast with one of the German version of Greta to also highlight what she's doing. But always then also finding the balance, because we know there are so many people that feel stressed due to the situation, that sometimes they can't take in more information. They feel hopeless. That's something that we don't want to contribute either. It's a little bit to your point, you have to provide the facts, but also in a way that people can cope at the same time. So we do also partner this up with a lot of mental health resources. I'm fortunate enough to work in a team that has great resources and knowledge when it comes to mental health. So that is something that we are exploring a bit more, how we can also link that more together to be able to handle eco-anxiety and other such things as well.
Let's pick up on that really quickly, because it's, as we all know, the climate crisis can come off as so dystopian and so dark. How do we give the different emotional spectrum, not just calmness, but also joy, and working together and having that community? And that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, and Oliver, how does learning fit into all of this?
Well, Pearson, as you say, life for lifetime of learning, and that goes all the way through. And our models, I think, the way we've got a rich history of pedagogy and the way that people learn, so we completely understand what learning is needed at different ages and stages. Equally, we have to operate within curriculum, because we tend to support schools and colleges and universities, and so there are some things from a content point of view that we have to operate within, but our range of subjects is vast. So some examples of different formats. We run lots of games, so even at the youngest age we have things like Bug Club and various things that allow you to kind of learn through games and get at the very, very smallest ages. Power Math, which isn't necessarily an ESG subject, but you kind of get a different way of engaging younger audiences. But then into labs and places where people can practice and test things, so it's not just a textbook, it's allowing with quizzes and development opportunities and videos embedded into content. And so just the way that we design learning, I think, is really important to help people engage for longer term. So we've got many different formats and environments, but right the way through to we're building virtual reality environments at the moment for language learning, which helps people be able to engage multi-country on subjects like the ones we're talking about. So I guess we see ourselves as much of an enabler of learning and development, both from a channel point of view and then from a content point of view. We have things like a BTEC in sustainability. So when we start to put that into curriculum, we actually try to work with governments or with industry organisations to build qualifications that then help people go out into the market and say, I know about this, I can work in this space, I want to make change. So we kind of have everything from kind of your basic content and way that you get that through to really different models of delivery, and then content spectrums all the way through as well. So I guess it's a luxury of being such a large company versus a 20-person company, and the fact that we operate in so many countries. But that's how we think about kind of ways of engaging younger audiences as well as on this topic.
Great, thank you. And kind of sticking with the same topic, we increasingly hear about kind of a fragmented way in which people are consuming media, particularly if you think about a family unit. I think we've gone from a situation maybe 20, 30 years ago where we'd all watch the same TV program, all the generations on the couch watching the same program, where now, the young kids might be playing a video game upstairs, whereas the parents are watching the 9 o'clock news downstairs, someone else might be listening to a podcast. How do you think, what's the role for partnership, and how do you think media companies should be working together, from different kind of content platforms to bridge those generational divides, to bring everything together and to not have it all be kind of a fragmented space?
I think it means everything. That's why it's so nice being this panel and hearing all the amazing work you are doing, because we really need to target people wherever they are, and also when it comes to learning, of course, repetition is kind of the mother of learning. So if you hear a message, no matter where you are and in different settings, that's really when it sticks and you start to take action. People need to hear it. So I think it's great that we are doing this, all of us, in different shapes and formats. We also try to think about not only what we do, but also where we do it. So we try to bring in, for example, are we at a music festival? Can we bring in a sustainability element into that? Everything from gender equality. Thank you.
Thank you. So gender equality, or be it climate change or so. So I think that's something we work with as well, being also present on sites where people already are.
Thank you. Oliver?
Yeah, sure. So I think this challenge is between content and channel. And I think what's important is that there are many, many new channels to get content to people. And so that engages with lots of different audiences, and that's kind of your reference, right? But actually the content perhaps continues to be king. But the challenge with the number of channels is that, and the reduction in the barriers to entry to provide content to the market is creating a real mismessaging. And that's what we see about fake news, and we see kind of all the kind of noise around what we hear about, whether it be climate or whether it be politics, whatever your content of interest is. But I think what's important is we need to be able to help young people to understand and discern what is good content from what is disingenuous content. And because, in your example, perhaps families sat together and there was a trusted media outlet in the centre, that was quite an easy environment for us as families when we were younger, perhaps, not wanting to put my age on everybody else. But as you get and bring through new generations, that's much harder to do, because they can consume stuff that there's not real clarity over the veracity of the information. Yet they don't understand necessarily, and I've got 2 young children, quite what they're looking at. And so then they believe things that may or may not be true. And so I think it's incumbent upon us as an industry, as both content providers and channel providers, to be able to help with that process. And so to me, that's the challenge that you've highlighted. I think that's our role in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it just made me think about how much responsibility we have as creators, and how maybe because we're so focused on fun, we forget as game makers about, oh yeah, we're like influencing people. We got to be careful about what we say and how we say it. For ustwogames, and maybe not for all the game studios, but we make sure that we partner with experts in the field and pay them, which is important. And right now we are working with Rock Foundation, and they've given us a grant to work with some climate experts on the next Monument Valley, which is so important because it's covering some sensitive topics. Spoilers, sorry. And for the, what was I going to say? Oh, there are other games that do this quite well. So Eline Media's Beyond Blue. This is a game about it's an underwater diving adventure. And they worked, or I think first it was inspired by the BBC's nature documentary, I think Planet Blue, I believe is what it's called.
Blue Planet.
Oh, Blue Planet, sorry. And they also include documentary footage in their game, which is really nice. It lends authenticity, but also education in it. There's another game that's coming out by Yaldi Games called Out and About, and it's a game about foraging. And what they're doing is not only, having the foraging knowledge in the game, but they're actually having, actual journalists and TikTok creators and botanical experts in the game as non-player characters. So I thought that's a nice way to go into that fantasy world, but also include elements of reality in a way that's not too jarring.
Can I just add on and based on what you're saying around the veracity of the people that contribute to your games to give it a level of truth and is it real? If you think about a use case around generative AI, which is obviously a very prevalent one, and you go to a ChatGPT or a Bard or whatever it might be, and you try and help it generate you some content, it will do so from the sources upon which it's trained. And those sources may be wide and varied and may not always be accurate. So if you kind of take a use case that we operate in, just to kind of bring this example to life around the importance of the data and information and why content still is still king, is that if you take a student trying to learn about biology or a particular subject, and they go and use that type of a engine to surface the results, well, it could well be pulling from blogs that actually are spurious and incorrect, or if you're talking about politics, talking about climate change in this particular example, well, if we have the experts that have built based on science-backed and knowledge-based information, that you then train a model on that's only using those sources, then that generative AI to be able to provide students with sources and information and learning is going to be a much higher quality and therefore hopefully drive a much better outcome both for them and for society. And that's kind of how we think about it.
Yeah.
No, I think also what you said there before in terms of getting more perspectives and so on. What we did during elections in different parts of the world, so we've done it everything from Sweden to Germany to the US. Once again, how we can highlight the importance of voting. That's usually where you can have the most impact. So it's actually called Play for the Planet, Play Your Part. So we're still in play language here. But there we did, once again, if people are listening to music and then it pops up, did you know you need to register to vote, for example, because in the US the system is rather complicated to actually be even allowed to vote. So there it pops up, and then it's basically a hub where you have different perspectives. So once again, not for or against any party or so, but more information on different key topics as well. So make sure that people actually use their voice and know what the choice is about. So that's something we've tried as well, and just pop up where you're listening to music.
So you mentioned play
your job here.
That's right. My job is very easy right now, so please keep it going.
You mentioned Play Your Part, which I want to look up and now collaborate with. But I'm wondering, like, this is not a question I'm not going to take over either, but there should be more organizational, like, interaction between those different communities, because I know as I mentioned earlier, I'm a member of Playing for the Planet. It's this UN-backed alliance, and it's just for games, but why isn't there anything else that connects with your world and so that we can, what's that called? Maybe it's the UN, I don't know. But maybe I can also just segue into the video that I'll share for it, if that makes sense. Because I'm really excited about this organization and its potential connections to yours. And would like to just start with the video and then talk a little bit more about it afterwards.
Today, 1 in 3 people in the world are playing video games. It's an entertainment industry that knows no bounds. From young to old, from Brazil to Bangladesh, everyone is playing. Now, the video game industry wants to play their part in the biggest challenge of our time. To keep our planet beautiful and level up in the battle against climate change. To help the UN achieve the global goals by forming a new alliance for action. We have no time to lose. The future lies in our hands. Together, we can all play for the planet.
Those are some of the organizations there. It's a bit of an old video, but it still speaks truth. And the 2 main focuses of this organization is one, of course, decarbonization of the studios, the game studios in there, and sharing the knowledge between the different studios, which is nice because normally we're quite competitive against each other, partially because of games, but also because it's just a competitive industry. And here we're forced to collaborate, and that's kind of fun. And the second big one is the Green Game Jam, which is like an annual event where all the studios get together and they try to ideate on how to put green initiatives into their games that are currently live and existing. So that was one of the reasons why we made the Lost Forest, that chapter for Monument Valley. And the history behind that is at the Green Game Jam, they start off with a bunch of talks just like this. And the speaker there was Peter Wohlleben, who was the author of The Hidden Life of Trees. I don't know if many of you have read it, but it's a beautiful nonfiction book. It reads like a romantic fairy tale about trees, and it speaks for them about how they connect through the mycelial networks and how the mothers protect the baby trees and make them more resilient. And when Peter Wohlleben gave his talk, it was in a dark forest. This was back in the pandemic, so it was all through Zoom. And it was in this actually a light forest. And he was talking and touching all the trees. And as he spoke, it gradually got darker and darker, and the sun set until he was in total darkness, which is similar to what a forest should be, in just total blackness. And in the distance, there was a little light, and that was his cabin. And so I think that that emotion and that tone is what we wanted to bring into the Lost Forest, and I think it was quite inspiring for us.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. I'll ask a question now again, if that's okay. And it's kind of riffing off something that you were both talking about, Oliver and Hanna, around meeting people where they are in terms of bringing the information about sustainability or about the right to vote, for example, to them. But then, as you were saying, Oliver, the barriers to creating content and transmitting content are becoming so low these days, and we know from some research recently that people are increasingly having this kind of information overload, and it's overwhelming, and it's everywhere. Then at the same time, we know that people want to hear more about climate change. They want more information on, because they're topics that touch them in their daily lives. So I guess my question is, how do you balance that, and how have you seen in the work you do, a desire for more of it, or have you also started to notice people going, whoa, I don't want to be talked to about climate change, every single minute of my day. Can you please tone it down a little bit? Is that something that you're noticing? How are you seeing that?
I was waiting for you.
Good question. I think that's why it's so important with content as well. I think all the examples we've heard here as well, how do you package it in a way? And we've been working a lot with scientists just to understand that how can we do it, and also in a good way that is based on science, but still that people can take in. So I think it's a fine balance between people stop listening and actually starting to engage. So I think sometimes it's just getting people across the threshold, whatever it may be. It could be that it is, for example, true crime. So we did a true crime, but it was not labeled as sustainability or climate. It was just episodes in existing feeds. We've done it the same in Sweden. We have a documentary series that are doing like dramas. And there we also had sustainability episodes, but not label them as such. Instead, if they're interested, they can easily click and go to the hub or external links and so on. So I think I keep coming back to the same thing, but try to get to where people are. And if you start small, usually people become more and more interested and start to actively search for more. And then they may become to the pure climate later on. But that, I think, is the important stuff to start small.
My only addition, we're a slightly different organisation in that because we're largely a learning company, almost all of our interventions, all of our products, all of our kind of content has a learning outcome in mind. So it's very specific about, again, pointing back to the kind of learning and efficacy of what we do. It's often intentional, and so it's hard to say, I think these go hand in hand, right? They're sort of intentional learning outcomes that we create in environments where people have made a positive decision to go and learn something, or either because they have to because it's a curriculum, or because they make a choice in a elective sort of learning event. But then you combine that with the kind of other formats. So you start to bring in and tease things in through podcasts or through games that reinforce, hopefully, the learning that we bring. And that's probably where the partnerships have the most value, if you like.
Yeah, and maybe talking about partnerships, we started talking about it a little bit already, but you have all partnered with different organizations. You've all spoken about partnering, for example, with scientists. Do you want to explain a little bit more about why that's important and how that's helped you really to kind of improve and strengthen the work you do around sustainability? Maybe I can come to Jennifer first, and playing for the Planet Alliance. How is that really helping you scale everything up?
Yeah, I think it's the knowledge sharing, whether it's decarb efforts or hey, this is the kind of initiative we put out in our game, and here's the data, or here's what we learned from it. We had put out a survey as a group, but for the studios and their games, they added a survey about behavior change regarding green content, and it was a great way to find out from all our gamers on the same exact type of survey what their response is. And I can share some number. I don't remember all the numbers, but all I remember, besides the fact that I think 80% of players are willing to pay for green content, I think there was another one about it was like 66% of players are open to changing their behaviors based on playing the green content. So it was nice to get that from a survey that ended up having 400,000 respondents. So it was quite nice. Gaming power.
Yeah, I mean, from our point of view, from a partnership, a company of our size has networks all over, and obviously we have a reach back into content, professors and scientists and all that help us with our content, but we also have ways to engage on different topics. So, and in different ways. So we partner with an organization. I'll give 2 examples, and one will be a video because we like videos. One is an organisation called Tailspin. So they're a pretty early stage startup. They build virtual reality learning environments, and so we've partnered with them to build out a series of content modules around a title called Where'd Everybody Go? So it's essentially helping people upskill in the workplace in terms of how do people manage and learn to manage within a disaggregated world. And that includes things like how do we deal with diversity, equity and inclusion when we're operating over a screen? Right? How do some of these challenges differ? And for us, that's kind of course, there's many other topics too, but in terms of just embedding kind of important ESG topics into our content, we try and do that in many places and in different formats. So that's kind of one way that we partner with an organisation where we're not specialists in building virtual reality. They talk about it being 4 times more effective learning, particularly in those environments where you've got to have difficult conversations, and actually that's hard to practice because you can't create the environment where you've got to work out how you let somebody off or how you've got to tell somebody they're going into a performance issue. Right? You can't practice that in real life that easily because it's a hard conversation, but in a virtual reality environment it's very effective. And the second one, and I'll give the prompt for the video shortly, is with One Young World. So One Young World being a global movement of essentially around sustainability goals and objectives, charitable organisation, and so we've partnered with them. Annually they bring thousands of young people and businesses together in a major conference. Actually, it's next week in Belfast, so we're going to attend that. If anyone else is there, we'd love to meet up. But we've built an academy with them around some topics, and if we cue the video now, you get to see what that academy is looking like.
Really, the world is in a turmoil.
We live in a burning house.
In a nutshell, we're not where we need to be. We are well off course.
In my lecture, I share my insights.
Working with 500 of the world's most influential brands, I've got some stories and some insights.
This comes right into the very core of what I seek to do here in the House of Lords.
The One Young World Academy is here to help you.
It's quite extraordinary how powerful this tool is.
Here is an opportunity to listen and learn and feed your curiosity.
One Young World Academy is designed to give you the skills, knowledge, confidence, and build your CV.
It's never too early to start. Never too early to start.
You are the future generation. Get involved. Be involved.
You have the ability to touch many people's lives.
You're the gold mine of what business is looking for.
This is a big mission and a big opportunity.
Sign up for the One Young World Academy to take your leadership to the next level today.
So if you want to get involved, it's going to definitely be worth your while.
My name is Professor Muhammad Yunus.
My name is Lord Michael Hastings.
Caroline Casey.
Fatou Bensouda.
Bill Browder.
Simon Steele.
Sign up now.
I think that's a really interesting partnership, particularly around this area. What I think doesn't come out in that is the model. So again, coming back to the learning design. So you see great lectures from great people in lots of different places. What we've done though is we've embedded project work off the back of that with coaches and support. So the idea being, you take the time, you learn the topic, but then you agree with your business, because it's for organisations to adopt and roll out to a number of their high and impactful sort of junior leaders or future leaders. And so they will then take on a project for their company and around the topic. They'll do that project with their employer, or wherever that might be, and then they'll also get a coach that will support them through that journey, and then they'll get assessed at the end of it. So it's not just listen to this nice video from some really cool people that have done some amazing stuff in the world. It's actually now apply it into the world, into your world. I think that's really powerful.
Thanks, Oliver. Hanna, do you want to come in on this topic?
Well, I think the important thing to note is that there are two sides that needs to come together. We often talk about the science needing to kind of adapt to the creators and understand how do we package this in a way that people will take in and feel engaged about. But I also think the other side is important. So that's something we worked a lot with. How do we really bring them together? Because creators often have a very clear view on how they prefer to have it and so on. So also being then led by science and needing to do it in a special way. But that has been very interesting as well. For example, people always end up with some kind of thing that they really want to build up on. And in one case, when we did this audio drama that I talked about, it was that there's no coffee in the future. So we did future scenarios and everyone wrote about that. So it's often those kind of things that a creator can take from a science report and know that this is something people can relate to. So I think that's a good example of bridging those two worlds. I also think it's important to work with different organizations that has all the expertise. I think you both have great examples of that. A recent one that I'm super happy that we have done is with UNICEF in terms of helping them get their amazing mental health resources out to people in war, so in Ukraine and in other situations in the world, where we really have the distribution. So that's something that it's lovely to be able to work with those organizations that are doing such a great work and just scale that more globally.
I love that. That's really bringing climate science to life. No more coffee in the future, and I think we all experience
and it's true.
That.
It's
a little bit over lunch, so that's the future, people. No coffee in the future. You've heard it here first. I think we can kind of move on to spending the next kind of 15 minutes or so taking some questions from the audience, and I'll start with one online, and you've kind of started talking about it a bit, Jennifer. It's a question from Emma Wilkins. On whether ustwogames has found a way to measure the impact of your content on your audience. Has it had the desired effect? Is it just about raising awareness? You started talking a bit about a survey that you've done, but you might have more to add in general.
Yeah, I mean, definitely through the survey, definitely through different activations that we encourage players to do, whether it's a petition like we did in Monument Valley 2, The Lost Forest, whether it's something that's modeled by ustwogames, where we plant a tree for every download of Alba. But something that we're exploring now with the next Monument Valley is how do we have, I guess, this is called mirrors and movement, and thinking about movement, how do we have continuous movement in our game? How do we have a continuous feedback loop with our players and be able to do some social impact initiative with them? And this is our challenge right now that we're working on. Yeah. Great question.
And I don't know if any...
Just to add, because I referenced our learning and efficacy kind of outlook, and if you go onto our homepage, one of the things that's called out is around ESG and what we do, and there's also learning and efficacy, and it's really important to us in terms of the outcomes that we achieve through anything we build, and so how we measure those, and we do that both in two ways. We do that in whenever we're designing any product, we have to build learning outcomes in, and we have to build the kind of right pedagogy, and we have to work out what will it impact, and that be across any topic, not just ESG, and then we will also work with other organisations to help them measure theirs. So, as an example, we work with a major sales organisation and basically looked at, okay, how do they change the kind of what they're training their people on, and therefore the impact that would have on their business in terms of the results. So we'll do both, right? And wherever we can, we'll try and take it right the way through to the ultimate outcome. Not always possible, but that's a big part of what we try and do.
Yeah, and we know from previous work in the forum that that's really difficult, right? You've started talking about kind of outcomes and impacts, and there's a lot of measurement around inputs. How much money is going into certain content types or with certain messages. Outputs, how many hours of video content, how many hours of learning. But impacts, really, how has that content then made that individual change their behavior? Yeah. That's really difficult. Hanna, how about Spotify? Are you looking at how the kind of climate content is then having an impact on your listeners?
Definitely, and to your point, it kind of stops. It's very difficult to know what people then do at home, or if this was the deciding factor. the only thing we have is, of course, how many have clicked, visit a hub, or everything from the voting hub I mentioned, or the climate hub and so on, or listening, of course. So those kind of things is more the data we have, but it's of course difficult to tell if that's what makes people change or not. So yeah, that's all we know, unfortunately.
Yeah, more work to be done.
Yeah.
I think there's also thinking about this, it should be about something more than changing our player or our audience's behavior. It is about more than that. I think that's a harder one to try to do, but I'd like to figure that out. And how do we do something more than that? How do we transform society? How do we start pushing ideas about like degrowth, or why don't you run for run for the government, or how do we start that rather than the smaller things, which are just as important in the behavior change, but getting them to do something more, to go crazy and run for president. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the challenge.
Yeah, it's about the system, which is a nice segue to a later talk by Laura Bates on who wrote a book on fix the system, not the women. Individual responsibility, but also very much system responsibility. I'll have a look at any questions in the room. Just a reminder to please say who you are and which organization you work for, just at the back there. You're going to need the microphones back.
You've guessed what I need. Thank you. Thanks very much. Fascinating panel. Thank you for your contributions. My name's Danielle Mulder. I'm at the BBC, and really interested in this sort of gaming aspect of it. We've been doing some impact analysis against our content as well, sort of primarily against our natural history unit content, such as Green Planet and the recent Wild Isles, if you saw that. And there's a few things that have come out of it, and lots of things actually. But in terms of informing and educating, that tends to have a stickiness to it in terms of the impact that it has. So if people are informed and educated on a topic, then that tends to stay with them. But it's the behavioural change bit that's really interesting to see, as a result of watching Wild Isles, for example, how long does that stay with you? And has it driven you to make a behavioural change? And how long does that change last for as well? Do we have to have this continuum of the conversation as well, and perhaps do some more longitudinal studies on this? And my question, because I'm fascinated in this topic, is have you tried to gamify, or do you have any examples where people have gamified behavioural change? So, perhaps in schools, looking at a classroom or a school or a community and seeing, if you can get younger people or different parts of the community to gamify the behavioural change, like eating less meat, for example, making different travel choices, and get them gaming that and competing against that. Have you seen that done? Is there a game out there that does that? Because it'd be really interesting to implement that at the BBC.
You got anything first?
No, go ahead.
I don't have a specific game example. I mean, again, we've built products that help change the kind of the way you learn and gamify that process. So whether it be numbers or English languages, you've got largely around junior, sort of very young children, but also in sort of laboratory type examples, but not around this subject that I know we've done or that I've seen a lot of. One thing that might be relevant is so it's like, if you think about games, they often give you rewards, don't they? They give you like badges or like ticks as you go through, and you collect stuff, and once you collect stuff you get more stuff, and there's sort of that kind of level of gamification. We bought a company called Credly, and they this last year, and they essentially provide credentials to learning. And so in a strange way we try to use that as a way of gamification for if you like slightly more serious outcomes. And so we're attaching now skills to all of those. So every single credential will have a series of skills to it. Certain credentials have stronger outcomes. And so we're trying to create pathways with those credentials. And so you can put these onto different topics. And therefore they become like a collector's item. But the idea being, ultimately, they're to help you do something, to get something. So if you can connect, for me, it's if you can connect the reward to an outcome. So if you can collect the badges that you collect in a game to achievement of something, in the same way as if you collect credentials in life, it helps you get a job. Do you see what I mean? It's sort of, there is a gamification element there, and we're trying to tease out how we do that. But it's much more, in my world, it's much more in the post-education world, kind of how do we try to put that into helping people signal and be clear around the skills they've got so they can make career moves more effectively. So it's a little bit tenuous, but hopefully it kind of makes some sense in the way it's kind of connected to that badging and that gamification side. But at a lower level in this topic, I don't know if it's probably exactly what you do, isn't it?
Yeah, were you going to say something? I didn't want. So I struggle with this one, partially because, yes, there isn't a game that does this directly. There are organizations that have looked into this and done it to some certain degree, like Count Us In. I personally struggle with it because it's an extrinsic reward. It's about individual behavior change, and this is where I lean more mirror than mover. I talked to Hanna Grahn, who's one of the writers of Mutazioni, which is an amazing, amazing game, and she had said one of the concerns of behavior change is that if you've mastered it, you could also use that kind of gamification for evil. Whereas my retort was like, well, we're already using it for evil. Look at free-to-play games when they try to exploit players. However, that's a total side note. My interest is more on being a mirror and trying to hit that more systemic transformation. And if on the way there we are doing individual behavior change, that's great. But for like giving achievements for eating less meat or flying less plane, I don't know if that's what I'm interested in for the work I'm doing, but there might be other game developers who are.
But I've also been so interested in behavioral change and looking into that because that's really everything. And what I think is interesting there is that when someone that you look up to or identify with change, you're more inclined to do so. And of course, everyone has a favorite artist. So I think that's something that is interesting. We have not been engaged with that, but I think the Coldplay tour is very interesting because they are the first tour that actually has a sustainability report. And they do a lot of communication both before and during the event. And you have everything from very sustainable materials. It's like a kinetic dance floor and so on. And when you see your absolute favorite band, I mean, you're paid and often went there to see your band and they're talking about this. And you also get rewards and so on if you recycle afterwards and so on. I think we should never underestimate that either when someone you look up to do something. So that's something that really can shift behavior as well, I would say, which is interesting.
Thank you. There's two questions at the front here. I think the lady at the front row is first.
Hello, thank you very much. Cindy Palmano, independent climate narrative strategist. I run an event this year at Barbican, which was about climate content. And I noticed something similar, which, forgive me if I'm wrong, but there are some fundamental presentation issues around climate and the work that we're doing in sustainability and content, which I think require some clear resolution. One of them being the dynamic between individual agency and system change, so sort of protecting people's sense of agency at the same time as being realistic about the fact that only system change can make the difference that's required, because, you know, being late in this particular scenario means failing. And so it's like, how do we measure what we're doing against the reality? And then I suppose the other one is about pessimism and optimism, so catastrophism and normalizing this. And so if we're talking about not being gloomy or catastrophic, that's inaction. But then what are the actions? Have we agreed what those actions are? Because if there's, say, political will is one of them and getting to vote, but it's also like there is a conversation to be had about whether it's heat pumps or electric cars, and we've got to make some decisions about these things, it strikes me, and then deliver it so that we can actually have the changes that we need to have to succeed in this. So comments, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think the worst thing that we should do is inaction, and we will do things imperfectly, we will make mistakes, but I think us doing something, moving towards a solution, picking the solution, moving towards it is quite important. regarding your topic about catastrophes and the future, and I don't know if this is addressing your question, but it reminded me a lot about Studio Ghibli's movies. They do things like Totoro or, oh no, my mind just got blank, but they did a lot of really, Ponyo, and they really cover an idea of cozy catastrophe quite well, and showing what good looks like when we are, hopefully in the future, looking more at the smaller communities, trying to downsize, being more cozy and, I guess, degrowthed. Does that cover any of the topics? I don't know.
Well, but we also tried to do that with the audio dramas I was talking about before, 2072, to not have a very depressing future, but either not like we have solved everything, but a little bit a mix of everything, because there are things that we need to give up, but there are also other things that might be even better that we will start to do. So we really try to find that balance. So it's not only no coffee, there are some good stuff as well. But I think it's important to have both. It's not this only shiny, will solve everything, but it's not also doom and gloom. Somewhere there in the middle, I think that's important.
I might have come up with this question back to you, actually. You say what we decide and who's the we, because it's a very big we, and so how do we collectively come to, what are the priorities and how do we do that, and what's the coalition, if they like, or who's got the authority on saying what that is. And obviously a lot of people in this room have influence on that. I guess one role MOVERS movies could play as a sort of coordinating factor is like, what are the priorities in order to solve first? But I don't think any one of us can do that. Like, we can all make our own judgments, of course, and we should all be following a North Star and a guiding light that says actually there are things that we want to make. We want to make a change in this world, and we have a voice, right, as organisations, and we need to make our judgments. But if there's something that says it's bigger than any one organisation, how do we come together to agree what they are? And obviously the international sustainability goals help us with that, and they should help guide us. But yeah, that'd be my view on it.
We'll take one final question. I think the lady here.
Hello, Nina Preston-Smith from Essential PLC. I think my question is probably more for Hannah and Oliver. To what extent does content feature in your company's respective ESG strategies, and how has that changed? Is it becoming a bigger feature, or because there's lots of things that we know that need to get into listed company sustainability strategies and reports, but how do you tell the story about how these themes show up in content as part of your reporting?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, well, we mainly do lift up different stories that we have done. So I would say it's more qualitative than quantitative at this point. What have we done in terms of on platform and also in different cases? So I would say that's what we lift up in our reports, but not only in the reports, because that's like once a year. So we try to bring it in much more often during the year. So we have For the Record is our news site where we post a lot about that, but in many different shapes and format. We try to bring it up more, what we do.
I'm actually going to be very cheeky because I have two experts, and Sandra and Fred right at the front of the room, who that is their job. So I will, if you're able to comment, is that okay if I ask them to comment as well? But there's kind of two ways we look at this, and one is how do we do our business? What's important inward looking, and how do we put sustainability goals on us? And the second is how do we project out into the world, and both from a pedagogy, learning, impact point of view, incredibly important. And then as it comes to content, as you talk about, and how we set our content strategy, that's not done globally across all parts of our business. It's done locally, if that makes sense. So, for higher education, that's done for higher education. But it's, so they make that choice based on the portfolio versus perhaps, where we run into assessments. But do you want, I don't know, Sandra, if you want to add 2 minutes?
I think you did a wonderful job. But yet, I think that there's two elements to it when it comes to our content. So it's actually the when you embed kind of sustainability related topics into the content itself, when it's not like topic specific. There's also topic specific information around, whether that be climate or D&I or whatever it may be. And then we have a third element to that is about kind of raising awareness of behavior change and partnerships and kind of going out there to kind of collaborate more. So and we try to touch upon all of those facets in the we have an annual report, which is at the moment kind of the main vehicle for kind of sustainability reporting and information. So we try to do it there. Hopefully what we want to do in the future is not really just to do the report, but reporting and more around dialogue and communication. I think, yeah. So hoping to have many other forums rather than just through the annual report.
Yeah.
I think like these type of dialogue and kind of partnerships are super important to continue the discussion.
But just because this is really good, if you bring that to life, we have a content and editorial policy that is global, and that talks about how do we make sure that we remove discrimination, how do we make sure that we represent the world effectively and fairly, you know, how do we not over-index on certain case studies from certain parts, you know, so we have that pervades all of our content. And then we have the specific content, such as One Young World, such as a BTEC and sustainability, to just kind of give a feel for. But we don't have a thou must create ESG content at this volume. It's kind of a portfolio decision at each part of our business. I hope that answers the question.
Great, thanks all, and thanks Sandra for coming in. I think we'll wrap it up there. So please join me in thanking our panel, Jennifer, Oliver, and Hannah.